Hurricane Dorian is still a 150 mile an hour Category 4 storm as it was earlier today. The National Hurricane Center advisory came out just a few moments ago, still with 150 mile per hour winds. That's 240 kilometers per hour and a pressure of 945 millibars. It's moving nearly due west, 280 degrees at 8 miles per hour. A tropical storm watch has just been issued for the east coast of Florida from Deerfield Beach to Sebastian Inlet. That is the breaking news at this hour. Not really anything else has changed, although the National Hurricane Center forecast cone has evolved just a little bit more as well. Still calling for the storm to remain quite a bit offshore before affecting the coasts of Georgia, South Carolina and North Carolina, still as a Category 2 by that point. Whether that happens or not remains to be seen. This is probably a low confidence forecast and there is still a lot that could change in the next 3 to 5 days. My name is Nathan Foy and joining me tonight on the stream is David, Orlando, Strat, Sam, Ryan and Tyler. Good evening to you all.
Good evening.
Oh, nice. Thank you.
We are back again with more coverage tonight, as you would expect. We're going to be covering everything. You can send us any questions or comments because we like to interact a lot as well. And the latest imagery of the hurricane, a few more blow-ups in the western side of the Eyewall, which has convinced some people that it could be a bit stronger than 150 miles per hour. First of all, does anyone in here agree that it might be a bit stronger now?
I think it could be a little bit stronger, like 150, 155 maybe.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking.
I'd want to see it hold up for a bit longer.
Yes, it
maybe
looks
another
like
hour or so before you confirm anything. But there is a more sustained trend of deeper convection of the minus 70 showing up around the core of the system, especially compared to yesterday when this was first intensifying, when we were commenting about how little of this convection blow-up there really was.
Yeah, there's a bit more now.
Yeah, it still looks to be intensifying a little bit. Not sure when. Do we have, what is the forecast for, what is it forecast to hit its peak?
In the next 12 hours, they're expecting the storm to peak with winds of 155 miles per hour. So that first M point on the National Hurricane Center forecast, they're expecting 155 miles per hour, just short of Category 5. The second M point there, that's 150 miles per hour, the same intensity as it is right now, and they're expecting a landfall at that intensity there. And then down to 145, then 140, then 125 at the 2 p.m. Tuesday dot, and then down to 110 at the 2 p.m. Wednesday dot, and then down to 100 still at the 2 p.m. Thursday dot, just off the North Carolina coast near where Florence landed last year. So what do we make of this forecast?
I mean, in terms of intensity, at least for the Bahamas, where impacts are certain at this point in time, well, what we should say no matter what is that 10 mile an hour difference between right now and Category 5 intensity 160 is not going to make much of a difference for these islands that are currently in harm's way. Devastation will certainly be wreaked upon them, especially if the storm does make a direct landfall with its eyewall, and the heavy storm surge that it will undoubtedly bring, especially the rainfall as well, considering it's supposed to stall over pretty much the same area for over a day. We shouldn't be focusing too much on specifics in terms of the 10 mile an hour difference in wind speed, rather than the broad impacts that this could bring in potential loss of life to people in the Bahamas, and then shift our focus on to the southeast after that. But the intensity forecast itself, you could say, has validity to it. It isn't going to be in exactly perfect conditions from here on out to intensify, although ocean heat content in the Bahamas is exceptionally high. Do keep in mind that if the core actually does make landfall, the eye actually moves ashore, there is going to be some dishevelment that definitely happens, and that can contribute to a weakening trend.
There it is near the top of our screen. There aren't a huge amount of sources that we can use satellite imagery at the moment because the mesoscale imagery went down earlier today. I don't know if it's still down. I assume at this point that it is. So we're using more regional sectors on our imagery presentation. If you missed it, a tropical storm watch issued for the east coast of Florida from Deerfield Beach to Sebastian Inlet. That is hot news right now. It's just happened in the last 10 minutes. So the hazards affecting land over the next few days that you might want to hear about. Hurricane conditions are expected in the hurricane warning area across the northwestern Bahamas by Sunday, with tropical storm conditions beginning tonight. Tropical storm conditions are possible within the tropical storm watch area on Monday. A life-threatening storm surge will raise water levels by as much as 10 to 15 feet above normal tide levels in areas of onshore winds. On the Abaco Islands and Grand Bahama Island. Near the coast, the surge will be accompanied by large and destructive waves. Dorian is expected to produce the following rainfall accumulations this weekend into the middle of next week. The northwestern Bahamas, 10 to 15 inches, isolated 25. The coastal sections of the southeast United States, 4 to 8 inches, isolated 12. Central Bahamas, 2 to 4 inches, isolated 6. And this rainfall may cause life-threatening flash floods. Swells will also begin to affect the east-facing shores of the Bahamas and the Florida East Coast and the southeastern United States coast during the next few days. These swells are likely to cause life-threatening surf and rip current conditions. Please consult products from your local weather office. The next National Hurricane Center update will happen at 8 p.m. Eastern Time, and the next complete advisory will be at 11 p.m., and we will probably be here to carry both of those tonight, as we were last night. If you've got comments or questions for us, start your message with Force 13 all in text. David, are we simulcasting on Facebook tonight?
Yes, we are simulcasting onto the page, Nathan.
So you can also get in touch if you're watching us on
Yes.
the Facebook stream too. That's wonderful. And we are here to serve. Just a few that have just come in to start us off. Would it hit South Carolina is a question we're getting. Well, the chances for that have certainly increased. And actually an identical question just beneath that, odds of a South Carolina landfall. We don't really offer odds on landfall, but if we're going to give you tropical storm force wind probabilities there, South Carolina coast now up above 60% really, so almost all that coastline above 60%.
Yeah, even if it doesn't make landfall, it's still going to be dangerous and life-threatening. So
Yes, if it follows that track that the National Hurricane Center is putting out, and don't forget they have cones for a reason, it could go on either side of the forecast track. That means a landfall possible near anywhere in that tropical storm watch zone. So anywhere from Palm Beach, tropical hurricane landfall could happen there of a very high intensity if it did do that, or it could go to the eastern extreme and just completely go well away from the coast. That would be a great scenario, but that doesn't appear particularly likely at the moment.
Nathan, I'm just picking up on the technical discussion of the NHC. Consequently, the steering current should collapse and Dorian is anticipated to drift towards the northwest and north-northwest whilst it's moving over the northwestern Bahamas and near the east coast of Florida.
Some more questions here. Does this look like it will follow the same path as Floyd?
Floyd? Possibly, but I don't think it's too much like Floyd right now. I think Floyd was much larger than Dorian was, but I think you're talking about track. Yeah, I could see that.
And I guess the main big question that are on a lot of people's lips this evening is, will it get to that Category 5 status? It has been keeping us guessing for quite a while now, over a day, as to whether we might just see that burst that will put it over the top. At the minute, though, we're not seeing signs of that just yet, although if that convection continues to blow up around the eye, we might see an upgrade to 155 later tonight.
And
just a reminder that the Category 5 threshold is 160.
Yeah, just I think some of the mesoscale is actually back. If you want to try to find that. some good news on that front.
All right. Well, we'll see if we
I'm
can
saying-
get that on.
Negative 70 is blowing around half the eye now in the western and southern quadrants. If that wraps around fully, we could potentially see an upgrade, but time left to tell in that regard. If that does happen, it'll probably be complete by the time reconnaissance gets there. So that could be our next hint. It's frustrating right now that there's nothing in the system and that the planes they're using to take off are coming from the Gulf Coast rather than Florida itself, really, because it gives us not nearly enough information at them.
Hold on. Why is that occurring?
I'm not sure why they're not taking off from eastern Florida like some of them do typically. I don't know why they're coming all the way from the Gulf of Mexico instead. For getting extra information to keep people safe, it's frustrating to say the least.
We do now have that mesoscale imagery, so we can see it in more clarity here, what's been going on in the last few minutes. The latest image on this is only 1 minute old. How about that? And you can see the progression of that darker area on the southern side of the eye wall that's wrapping around the eye. Now, the mesoscale imagery can make the storm look a lot better than it actually is. We are looking really not just for the reds to wrap all the way around, which, you know, in older models, in older satellite imagery would suggest category 5. We're actually looking for the black areas to wrap all the way around before we can even consider calling it a category 5 storm. The eye temperature is certainly helping it along the way, because the eye temperature is disproportionately warm compared to what we would usually expect, although not quite as warm as it has been recently. I think the latest temperature estimate now is 15 degrees Celsius. Yesterday it reached a maximum of 20 from the satellite. For reference, Hurricane Irma was about 17 or 18 degrees. Hurricane Maria around the same. So at one point it had a warmer eye than both of those storms. Doesn't mean it was stronger though, because the convection around the eye, the cloud tops were much more impressive in those two category 5 hurricanes than it is in this storm, and that's still true tonight. So I think 150 miles an hour is still fair at this time. If we see more of that black wrapping around, we might see a few miles per hour get added on.
Yeah, I wouldn't consider pondering a full category 5 from the system unless that black manages to fully surround the core of the storm. Then we can really consider having more of that conversation as reconnaissance starts to enter the storm. By that point in time, looks like we're probably going to be around 3 hours away before recon gets to that point, though.
All right, so in fact, let me just see if we can get to some more imagery, whether we've got an update or not. We're trying to get some updated imagery here. I think this... no, that isn't quite up to date. Well, we'll leave you with this satellite just for the time being. I don't know if anyone wants to mention anything else that's going on in the tropics right now.
Just some
Sure.
developmental systems, like the one near the Cape Verde Islands with a 20% chance of cyclone formation, 48 hours, 60% in 5 days. And there's one in the Gulf of Mexico, which is 20% in 40 hours, 30%. Neither of them really looking to be too much danger to anything.
However, in the Pacific, we do have some more systems. We have Invest 98E that has a 70% chance within the next 48 hours, 90% chance within the next 5 days, and then I believe there are also 3 invests in the Western Pacific. 2 of them have the JTWC have issued tropical cyclone formation alerts on them and could be developing relatively soon. Invest 91W and Invest 92W.
Yeah. Looks like we have a lot of work cut out for us in the coming days if everything heats up all at once, because both Invest 91W and 92W are directly threatening land at this point in time, potentially. And the area of interest in the Gulf of Mexico, I think they were saying in the discussion is supposed to drift to the west-southwest towards the southern Gulf of Mexico to potentially impact Mexico or southern Texas. So if that manages to develop, then we're going to have another threat on our hands to keep an eye on as well.
Do we have any recon information tonight?
Let me
Still 3
check.
hours away.
3 hours away still?
It hasn't even crossed Florida yet. It's still in the Gulf of Mexico.
Ah, yes, I see that. Yeah, still
And
got
that's the
ways
only
to
one coming in
go.
right now. Yeah. Frustrating
Well,
to
we'll
say the
get
least at this point in time.
we'll get news on that tonight, I'm sure. Well, the recon might come in at the most, important point when this storm intensifies, if it intensifies some more tonight. And the National Hurricane Center expecting 155 miles an hour.
Yeah. If they get in now, they could potentially find it if this trend were to continue.
A lot of people want to hear about
deepening around the
models
Eyewall.
as well, Strat. I don't know if you want to run some models, or anyone else for that matter.
Well, just give a bit of consensus. I'll show the global models on the AT&T.
Yep.
Let me pull it up on. This is the AT&T runs initialized at. You see almost all of them keep it offshore, at least barely. But by the time we get to 5 days, there's going to be massive deviation. We've seen that happen so far, where 3 days ago, 5 days showed potentially Gulf of Mexico. Now it's all the way up here, so that's way out of the cone of uncertainty at that point in time. For all we know, we could see another massive shift to the west towards the Carolinas at that point in time, or we could see another drastic shift further to the east. There are still some models that show landfall. The H1 and the HWRF are notable exceptions. And ensemble models of the Euro and GFS also show landfalls at this point in time, so we have to monitor that closely. And then once you get further out towards the 120-hour mark, with the massive potential deviation uncertainty because the steering currents break down here, you have to keep an eye out for how the trough that's supposed to potentially yank this out further to the east, away from the rest of the United States, acts up. Because if high pressure rebuilds are stronger than forecast, or that trough is weaker, then we could see potential problems further down the line for more of the East Coast than what we're seeing right now. But it's still very important to highlight that there's extreme model uncertainty at this point in time, way different than what we were talking about just a few days ago.
Well, people have I've noticed that people have started to complain today. We figured that would come at some point. That the models and the forecasts from everyone have been absolutely and totally wrong.
Yeah,
well,
but
the answer to that is no, because there's a cone of uncertainty for a reason. It's actually still within that cone if you to take the numbers and stuff at that time, and where this turn is happening is still supposed to technically be on the eastern part of it. You have to say tracking hurricanes and making forecasts for their tracks and intensities is very tricky and uncertain to do. It's one of the harder parts of meteorology. So that's why specific people make sure to say that there's
I think what we can
wiggle
say,
room in
Strat,
air, possibly.
is that the certainty of the storm's track so far between Puerto Rico and the Bahamas has been pretty assured, and it has gone as we've expected, really. What was always going to be uncertain was what would happen during and after the Bahamas.
Oh, totally. And now we're seeing that difference come into play from complete model certainty, the central to southern East Coast Florida landfall potential move to Gulf of Mexico, to no major models showing a direct Florida landfall at this point in time. We should still caution that this can change. This model spread itself is still pretty vast, and this doesn't even include ensemble models, some of which are still significantly further west. I want to see the AT&Z GFS come out, and potentially the 0Z European really late tonight, because the 12Z GFS took a jog further west. It's actually further west than any of the models in this envelope, other than the H1 and the HWRF. So I'd want to keep an eye on that to see what happens in that regard. And then potentially with the European later in the night. I think the CMC, we trash it for its intensities and storm formations, is also further west than this as well. So keep an eye on that when that potentially comes out again at the 0Z time frame.
Yeah, CMC was regularly further towards the Florida coast.
Yeah, and the GFS run, I don't think it's listed in this one, is further west than everything but the H1 and the HWRF in this. Don't include the Tab M and the Tab S. Those are going absolutely berserk right now. But there's still great uncertainty, and in terms of people saying people got it wrong and stuff, the only people that got this forecast wrong were people that were saying as a fact in their videos, their thumbnails, their titles, and their commentary or whatever that this was going to make landfall in Florida as a fact.
Yeah.
In general, I haven't seen people do that. Big organizations, the NHC in particular, always make sure to say there's uncertainty in the forecast cone. 2 days ago, they were especially noting that at the time frame out, they were mentioning the deviation of how big the cone of uncertainty was, and that certainly
Yeah, and this is because even though the National Hurricane Center say don't look at the center of the storm's track, people just can't help but do that. I mean, I guess it it's easy to do, and an easy mistake to make, but the cone of uncertainty is there for a reason. As we always say, the center of that cone could track, the center of the storm, could track anywhere within that cone over the next 5 days, and that is a massive area of uncertainty when we get to Wednesday, Thursday.
Yes, the center of the cone is just the mean or the median of all of the possible forecast models. It's just kind of outlining like where the general consensus is. It doesn't necessarily mean that that's the forecast track, which misleads a lot of people because it is because the NHC, yes, is typically the main source for seeking information on the hurricane and where it's going to hit, but the important thing is that their forecast track does the cone the track in the middle of the cone does not mean that is where the storm is going to go, because especially in this case when you have a whole bunch of different scenarios that could still play out. It is a very unpredictable storm, and everyone in the forecast cone needs to prepare for a possible landfall.
Yeah.
Still moving at 8 miles per hour. No one heard any of what I just said because my microphone was off, but I'll say it again. We're looking out for a potential slowdown in the storm's movement as it continues to track in a westerly direction. Currently moving at 8 miles per hour. If it does slow down, there is a possibility it becomes more likely that the storm will start to turn further north. Also, we're looking at that black area that's extending around the eye, and if that continues, then we may well see an increase in the storm's intensity.
Yeah, and two just other quick things to note is that with the cone of uncertainty, again, 33% of the time, a third of the time, the storm actually goes outside of that cone. So it can go out within the regular standard deviations of track error, and go somewhere completely else. I'm not saying that's going to happen at all. In regard to the system, you have to keep that in mind, especially with the storm, with the future track is uncertain as Dorian's, that stuff like that can happen, and it could actually potentially go out of the cone of uncertainty at some point in time. And just in regards to the NHC, people hyping, certain track locations so they see the dots, like we said earlier, that doesn't necessarily mean much, although the NHC doesn't do itself any favors by adding that feature that allows you to make a forecast track line. But I digress with that.
Why do they actually do that?
I'm not sure, to be honest. Maybe just aesthetics, I don't know, it looks kind of nice to see kind of a connect the dots things to some people.
Yeah.
When they talk about their standard deviations and such and the cone uncertainty, it really doesn't help them to have the nice neat auto draw line thing between each dot. But there's only so much you can ask for, I guess. I am curious why they do it, though. Really, if it really contradicts a lot of the things they talk about.
Yeah, well, I mean, I don't know why they do it, but I do know that like some agencies, like, I mean, the Weather Channel's graphics, they generally what they'll do is they'll sort of have like a line at at a particular time showing that the storm could be anywhere along this line at this particular point in time, something like that. I'm surprised that I don't know why the NHC doesn't do that because I really like it.
Yeah, and I'm just taking another look at satellite imagery in that 1 minute. It looks like that really dark band of -70s is trying its best to fully wrap around. It looks like it's 2/3 to 3/4 of the way done now.
This is quite a development if it sustains.
Yeah. The only quadrant that isn't completely covered right now is the northwestern one. It looks like the convection is trying to wrap around it right now as well. So this is a very concerning development, in particular for Grand Bahama and the northern Bahamas Islands. If this continues and we see a full wraparound of this, since the start of the stream, this has been a pretty startling development. Last night, we were talking about the eye first coming out, and seeing that intensification phase. And now we might be seeing this come
Now, but
out as
Strat,
well.
don't forget rule number 1 of looking at mesoscale imagery. This is 1 minute imagery, and
Exactly.
knee-jerk reactions are so easy to make.
Oh, totally. You don't want to make any assumptions and say,
Before
this is a Category 5.
if
so
we
it
want to
has
make
be
an
cloud top
assumption,
point."
you've got to look at this imagery for a good 2 or 3 hours before you can make a judgment call.
You want to see sustained imagery of such progress before you make any claims. And what could help us out as well as making any conclusions is the reconnaissance planes. Mission 25 looks like it's about to cross over western Florida. It's still in the Gulf of Mexico. There's another one that just took off, though. I'm not sure I'm not really a huge geography person with the longitude latitude, but it's at exactly 82 degrees west, 20 degrees north. I think this is already east of Florida, if I'm not mistaken.
I don't think so.
No? Okay, I guess I'm wrong. I don't know why they're taking these planes off from west of Florida, though, at this point in time, if, time is so vital in particular.
It depends what the bases are, I guess, but the
Actually,
east
I
coast
think
of
it's
Florida...
in Florida right now, actually.
Yeah, the east coast of Florida is just about touches 80 degrees west.
So I think this is actually taking off from Florida right now. There's another one. The other one that's still over the Gulf of Mexico is at 83.5 degrees west. But it's at... Yeah, it's at 28 degrees north as well. So it looks like it is taking off from around central Florida.
Alright, so we'll get a lot more information later on tonight as we continue to watch Hurricane Dorian. If you've just joined us, a tropical storm watch has now been issued for the east coast of Florida from Deerfield Beach to Sebastian Inlet. Apart from that, not really any new information regarding the storm's intensity at all. The National Hurricane Center still have it at 150 miles per hour. They go with 945 millibars. We're a little lower at 942. And Recon have been founding numbers in and around those two figures. And we're waiting to see if they find anything new later tonight. We're going to take a very short break here. We'll be back in just a few moments where we'll continue talking about Hurricane Dorian and take some of your questions. Hurricane Dorian on the screen right now. This is the very latest imagery. The last frame is from half past, so that is just 2 minutes ago. And the darker areas continue to expand, and that means that most likely the storm is beginning a new intensification phase. Already 150 mile an hour winds. And let's see if we can get a new eye temperature reading whilst we reintroduce the team. Same people as before, I think. Yep, and well, whilst we wait for that eye temperature reading, anything anything anyone would like to bring up right now?
Yeah, I'd like to really remark on that growing spiral of black that's surrounding the storm. It looks, while it looks very mesmerizing, but it is really a sign that the storm is going to continue to intensify, and I think that they'll very likely push it past the brink of Category 5.
And we shouldn't jump the gun yet, though, because it could just easily collapse before reconnaissance gets there.
Yes, but it's still very much possible, and the outflow, I really see that the outflow to the east is really noteworthy in this. It's a very noteworthy feature of this storm.
Yeah, but I'd still want to wait before reconnaissance enters the storm to really make any full claims of Category 5.
Well, of course we do. Ideally, we want recon in hurricanes 24/7.
Yeah. Although I will say, in terms of potential intensification on the 1 minute scale, it is alarming to see these blacks continue to wrap around the center of the storm. Before I make any more certainty in terms of ideas, I'd like to see a more sustained trend of that, though, first. So if it's still like that in 2 hours, so when reconnaissance gets there, then we could maybe start to get more serious about potential talks as the data starts to trickle in, unfortunately. In the meantime, though, we're still looking at, regardless of 150 to 160, an extremely dangerous storm. And just for the stream itself as well, some people are asking if we can get to some questions as well.
Sure.
If you have any questions, start your message with Force 13 all in text. Or
from what I've seen, a lot of questions are asking why the storm's not going to Florida anymore, they say. Well, it's not necessarily not coming to Florida. They have just issued a tropical storm watch for part of the Florida coast. It looks less likely that the center of the storm will strike Florida, but hurricanes aren't 1 mile wide, they are several hundred miles wide, and therefore there will probably be tropical storm or maybe even hurricane conditions along large parts of the Florida coast with huge amounts of rainfall. Not sure exactly how much anymore for Florida, but maybe 6 inches, possibly more than that if it continues to track west. And then further north, you're looking at Georgia, South Carolina, North Carolina in particular, those last two. Maybe a landfall zone for the storm, and that's 12 inches of rain right there at least.
Nathan, I'd just like to mention that Dorian is forecast to move over a deep layer of very warm waters, prevailing low shear along the hurricane's path. Some additional strengthening is possible during the next day or so. And they also say the hurricane will experience some fluctuations in intensity due to eyewall replacement cycles that are difficult to predict. Beyond day 3, as the hurricane begins to gain latitude, encounters increasing shear gradually weakening. It is anticipated that Dorian will remain a dangerous hurricane through 5 days.
Yes, it definitely could. The National Hurricane Center, it's not very often, but it has the storm at Category 2 or higher for the whole 5-day period. All of those M's there, that's Category 3 or higher, and the last 2 dots there are at Category 2 intensity. You've really got to watch anywhere within that cone. Could be a landfall zone. That is a huge area that could receive a hurricane landfall, or indeed a major hurricane landfall if you're inside the solid white zone, the 3-day cone. What was that?
I had no idea.
Okay,
Yeah,
that's strange.
I
Yeah, go ahead. No? Okay. As you can see there, though, the National Hurricane Center is still forecasting a landfall or maybe multiple landfalls on the northern Bahamas, and then continuing towards the northwest. And it looks now that northwest turn won't actually occur until it does reach those islands. So we're sort of looking at the storm going further west until then. It would be very welcome news if we started to see a trend of the storm turning northwest any time before it strikes those islands.
And Nathan, looking at the satellite imagery and comparing it to this time yesterday, it has really developed considerably.
Yeah, fair amount. It could still look better, believe it or not. Again, this is the imagery that we often look at here, the mesoscale imagery, and it looks extremely good when you look at that. But let's now go and take a look at the RAM imagery. The RAM imagery has been around a lot longer. The color scheme on that imagery is a lot more established, and it's, in my opinion, not a lot less what you would call knee-jerk. So just bring it up on the screen now. This is one of the RAM images. Okay, it doesn't look as pretty, but we're not on about pretty pictures here. And you will find that there isn't that much red. Well, there is more than there was yesterday, but still not a huge amount. Now, we're looking for a whole ring of red all around the eye to call it maybe a Category 5, but a 155 mile an hour Category 4, and maybe a Category 5 if you start to see a few brighter red colours appearing on this image. Given that the eye temperature is around 15 degrees Celsius, just a red ring probably isn't enough. It would have been yesterday when the eye temperature was higher at 20 degrees Celsius, but probably not today. You would need just a little bit of brighter red somewhere around the eye to just push it over the top. At the minute, as you can see, it's not far away, but there is still some work to do if this storm is going to reach Category 5. And at the moment, not happening just now. So I just want to every so often bring people down to earth on that kind of imagery that we look at quite often.
I will say though that I'm interested in an updated frame from that whenever the next one comes out, because those reds that are more scattered on the right side of that imagery at the next frame will almost certainly be fully covered on that right side, it looks like, unless this convection really bubbles down significantly. And keeping track of the 1 minute scale as well, the blacks are continuing to develop around the rest of the eye to fully wrap around. At least on the southwestern quadrant, though, the first really heavy band is significantly further out than where this second burst is kind of developing further in. So maybe we could be finally starting to see the first hints of an eyewall replacement cycle.
Well, that would be interesting if we are. We know it's coming up at some point, but we cannot forecast when an eyewall replacement cycle occurs. Would someone just like to describe to the layperson what an eyewall replacement cycle is and how it affects these storms? Or I can, if you like.
What was the question again? I can.
I would just like an explanation on what exactly is an eyewall replacement cycle and how do they affect storms.
Well, I mean, you might be able to explain this a bit better than me. But
Okay, well, we're back to where we were before. Well,
is when go, you do it.
Well, quite often you'll start to see, and it's unexplained reasons, you'll either see an eyewall collapse or a new eyewall start to build in around the old one, and then the eyewall replacement cycle begins. The strength of the storm is distributed from the first eyewall to the second one quite often. It can interfere with the storm's intensity. You'll usually see a little bit of weakening as it does so, and sometimes if an eyewall replacement cycle goes pretty badly, dry air can get ingested into the storm and they never recover. That can happen sometimes. I don't think it's going to happen with this storm because it just looks so good right now. I just don't think dry air could ever break in, even if there was an eyewall replacement cycle. Unlike when the storm was first intensifying. When dry air was in the vicinity and the storm was really struggling, it put the handbrake on its intensifying phase. Okay, let's see if we have anything more. Well, people want us to talk about more models. I don't have them here, but some of our members might. Could the storm possibly cross through Florida is another question. You know, well, obviously we've been talking about those chances decreasing all the while. If you mean cross through Florida from one side straight through to the other, I don't think that's on the table anymore. Be extremely unlikely. When you look at that track forecast from National Hurricane Center, even when you factor in the cone, center of the storm could pass anywhere within the cone. At most, you'd be looking at the storm just about clipping Lake Okeechobee and almost entering the Gulf of Mexico, but not quite. First of all, when is Recon coming back? You said 3 hours?
Yeah, probably about 3 hours from now.
It's getting a bit closer now, though, especially since a second plane looks to have taken off from over the state. Let me see if I can refresh.
Well, it's only about 300 miles away from Florida, so just over 300 miles, so it can't take 3 hours, surely.
Well, there's one that's crossing over Florida right now. The one from the Gulf of Mexico is halfway over the peninsula right now.
So maybe 1.5, 2 hours.
Yeah, and the second one is in a very similar location right now as it just took off. It did take multiple loops around its takeoff zone, but it looks like it's finally heading in the right trajectory towards the storm at the same time.
So there'll probably be a tag team around the hurricane, hey?
So hopefully by the time the 8 p.m. intermediate advisory comes out, we're starting to finally get some information in.
All right. What are some of the more notorious storms to hit the Bahamas in terms of their impact? Now, the Bahamas usually gets off quite well with these storms. You never often hear of large death counts, or quite often you see damage, sure. Of course, they are very small islands. Andrew probably affected the Bahamas. Probably one of the most severe storms to do so when it struck as a Category 5. I'm sure there are more. My mind's to mush at the minute. Can you think of any other Category 5 landfalls on the Bahamas? I'm confident there are some more.
Yeah, well, Andrew is the real big one that hit the
glaringly
Bahamas,
obvious one.
The glaring, and I think it was the worst storm that the Bahamas had ever seen by quite some distance, and it only killed like 4 people or something like that. So, yeah, they get they really
Unless you count
do get it
Joaquin.
quite easy. Well, yeah, and maybe Joaquin, but yeah.
I was
don't
going to
really
say the
count them.
comparison I haven't really seen brought up, especially with the track of a steering current breakdown, is actually Joaquin.
Oh God.
Well, yeah, no. I'm not saying same track or anything like that at all. But in terms of similarities in a location of track breakdown, these two storms could be very similar.
No, Strat. Joaquin, like, formed, it did like a U-turn around the Bahamas, and then it went out to sea. I don't think that this storm's going to do that.
No, I'm not saying that at all. I'm saying in terms of the location where steering currents kind of broke down for both of the storms.
Oh, okay.
Right, and Floyd also struck as a borderline Category 5 20 years ago.
That's true as well.
That anniversary must be very soon.
I think it's in like 2 weeks, because I think Floyd was like mid-September-ish, so very soon.
Like people asking whether the storm will grow as it moves further north. It quite obviously will, especially if an Eyewall replacement cycle happens. That will probably trigger a wind field growth, which will then continue as the storm moves further north. Devon was talking about this earlier on our lunchtime discussion, and we were talking about it. He said that it would probably grow to maybe 1.5 times its size, I think he said.
Yeah, and even what you presume to be not a large impact from that is extremely vital at this point in time for where any potential impact could end up, especially when we consider any small track deviations on top of that can make very large differences as well.
A question, if it becomes a Category 5, will it become the worst hurricane to hit the Bahamas since Floyd? Well, I guess.
I don't know. I mean, are you talking about if it hits the Bahamas as a Cat 5, or if it just gets to Cat 5 in general?
Well, to be honest, the both of them are probably linked by now, because if it becomes a Category 5 now, it won't weaken very much before landfall.
Yeah, so I guess, yeah, I mean, probably, I don't know, but I think if it did hit the Bahamas as a Cat 5, it would be the strongest since Andrew. I think we can say that for certain.
And indeed, the Andrew comparisons will keep coming out for the time being until and unless it turns towards the north.
Well, it's probably going to turn to the north, but like, the only reason why I mentioned Andrew is because it made landfall in the Bahamas as a Cat 5. Not saying that this is going to, but it does. There is the chance that it could.
Yeah, it's always important to bring up some analogs where we can to give us, some reference points in terms of these scenarios. I'm looking at that satellite imagery again, too, on the 1-minute scale. It looks like there's a new burst of the colder cloud tops coming up on the western side of the Eyewall, further in than the initial burst that's still strong and further out. Still very concerning development. I was wondering if we could pull up some of the more longer range imagery, just to see more of a long-term development, so we can kind of help people see a trend that's really happened.
Before we do that,
hours.
Just getting another calculation of the eye temperature, and it does appear to be going down. The eye temperature is now just a new frame coming in. Let's see if there's a change again. Yep, getting pretty consistent readings. Eye temperature's now down to 14 degrees Celsius, so it's now dropped 6 degrees since yesterday. So that means that the blowing up cloud tops will mean just that tiny little bit less for its intensity than it would have before. But if it does keep blowing up, I think we'll see 155 miles per hour. Let's just see if we can get some of that longer term GOES 16 imagery now on our screen. There is a run spanning about 6 hours.
Because if you take a look at the new burst of convection that's developing up close to the Eyewall, if that wraps around on the inside, we could see 2 separate rings of heavy convection around the core of the system, which could potentially indicate the start of an Eyewall replacement cycle.
Just looking at this imagery once again, rather mesmerizing when you see it just pushing in that same direction the whole day towards those northernmost Bahamas.
And then on that longer range imagery, you also see numerous cases where, the eye will start to crack and wobble a bit, and we thought, could this start to be a weakening trend? And again, this isn't the first time it's happened. This has happened multiple times in the past 2 days. The eye has sustained itself all throughout, which is pretty unfortunate to see, and we're going to have to continue to monitor to see if any changes happen. I will say that despite the eye somewhat decreasing in temperature, it's still startlingly clear on satellite imagery in general, especially visible. On infrared, it still looks very impressive as well. I was wondering, what would SATEET say about the storm's intensity right now? I'm not sure how accurate it'd be, considering just recent developments with the cloud top blow-ups.
Well, SATEET, for those who don't know, is Force 13's way of measuring the satellite, measuring the intensity based on the satellite observations. We were finding values earlier of the 155 range. It has to sustain for a good 2 hours or so, and so far it's only been about 1 hour. At least 2 hours. Really, ideally, we would want 3. So we are close to putting it up to 155 miles an hour, but we're still sitting on that, at least at the moment.
Yep, and regardless of that, by the time we really want to get to that point around 8 p.m. is fortunately when reconnaissance planes will start to be entering the storm as well. One is just about to exit the Florida coast. That's Mission 26, and Mission 25 is about halfway over the state right now. Looks like getting close as well to being out of the state and over the water. So by 8 p.m., both these aircrafts will be in the center of the storm at least through one time. And just for people that are curious about any particular things, if you have any questions that you want us to answer, start your message with the Force 13 all in text or at Force 13 in text as well. Lights up for us in a nice bright orange for us to see. Someone asked, how wide is Dorian right now in terms of, I'm assuming they mean wind radius. I know I can say the wind radius for hurricane force winds is 25 nautical miles in 3 of the quadrants and 20 nautical miles in the southwest quadrant. Although considering the convection blow-up, that could be different at this point in time. That data's from a couple hours ago.
And tropical storm force winds extend out 105 miles. That has actually gone down a little bit.
Yeah, which you could say is somewhat surprising. Someone just asked the question again, so that kind of works out with it. You'd assume that as it matures, it'll be increasing, but I guess consolidation has just continued to happen with the storm, and we won't really see a significant increase in wind radius until an Eyewall replacement cycle occurs.
Yeah, no, sure. Let's see if we can look. Well, I just want to read out these key messages again from the National Hurricane Center. Very important that we go through this. A prolonged period of life-threatening storm surge, devastating hurricane-force winds, and heavy rains capable of life-threatening flash floods are expected on the Abaco Islands and Grand Bahama Sunday through Monday, and a hurricane warning is in effect for these areas. A tropical storm watch is in effect for a portion of the Florida east coast, since Dorian is forecast to slow down and turn northward as it approaches the coast. Life-threatening storm surge and dangerous hurricane-force winds are still possible along portions of the Florida east coast by the early to middle part of next week. Residents should have their hurricane plan in place, know if they are in a hurricane evacuation zone, and listen to advice given by local emergency officials. There is an increasing risk of strong winds and dangerous storm surge along the coasts of Georgia, South Carolina, and North Carolina during the middle of next week. Residents in these areas should continue to monitor the progress of Dorian. Heavy rains capable of life-threatening flash floods are possible over coastal sections of the southeastern United States from Sunday through much of next week. So that pretty much summarizes the whole thing regarding Dorian. The National Hurricane Center track looks like this, and I'll read out their discussion in a few moments. Strat.
I was just going to say all those messages are clearly correct, and if you're in potentially harm's way, make sure to go to the government's website on how to prepare for hurricane impact, ready.gov/hurricanes. I used our channel, post the link in the chat a couple times, and I will do that again shortly as you continue to discuss potential track.
Yep, so just reading off, I was there a minute ago, let me just go and find that one again from the National Hurricane Center, just to read a few things from the discussion as we now switch back to that satellite imagery again. There is the latest frames of the storm almost up to the minute. So they say the satellite presentation continues to be outstanding, the eye has remained very distinct and is surrounded by a ring of very deep convection. Air Force planes got 130 knots, that's 150 miles an hour, forecast to move over a deep layer of very warm waters, and with the prevailing low wind shear along the hurricane's path, some additional strengthening is possible during the next day or so. Most likely, however, the hurricane will experience some fluctuations in intensity due to eyewall replacement cycles that are difficult to predict. Beyond 3 days, as the hurricane begins to gain latitude and encounters increasing shear, gradual weakening is expected, but Dorian will remain a dangerous hurricane through 5 days. The guidance, just see here, the uncertainty in the track is high, whilst the hurricane is moving slowly across the northwestern Bahamas and near the east coast of Florida. Any deviation of Dorian's core to the west, would result in an increase in the winds along the east coast of Florida, obviously. So we are really watching very closely any further track changes. Given that the area of tropical storm force winds could expand, and taking into account the uncertainty in the track forecast, they issued a tropical storm watch for the east of Florida from Deerfield Beach to Sebastian Inlet. That's what they did just an hour ago, and that's the latest right now. We'll be back again in just a moment, in a few moments, with another hour of coverage. We're staying on the air for the foreseeable. Send us a message if you have any questions. This is Force 13 Live. Coverage continues in a moment. You can also help the project become even better by becoming a patron. You can see more information about all the benefits involved by visiting patreon.com/Force13. With a special thanks to these people for being our most valued patrons this month. You can also check out our growing merch store so you can show Force 13's colors wherever you go. You can also find a link to our Discord server underneath this video in the description. You're watching Force 13's live streaming service. Hurricane Dorian remains a strong Category 4 storm at this time, with winds, according to the National Hurricane Center, 150 miles per hour. A pressure, they say, of 945 millibars were slightly lower in our estimate at 942. Either way, this storm is very strong, and it looks like it is continuing to intensify a little more, very slowly but surely, getting towards the higher reaches of Category 4 status and possibly towards Category 5. We've given it a 45% chance of getting to Category 5 status. My name is Nathan Foy. I'm joined by the team in this hour. If you missed the news last hour, the National Hurricane Center did issue a tropical storm watch for Deerfield Beach to Sebastian Inlet. In their words, due to the uncertainty of the potential for the wind field increasing, that it might impact those areas with tropical storm force winds. Okay, Strat, go ahead.
I was going to say, and just to talk about any potential watches, someone else mentioned in the chat, but the 18Z GFS parent run that is rendering right now is actually shifted west again. And has Dorian barely offshore by less than 50 miles, it looks like, in its latest, off the coast of Florida, and then kind of trailing the coast along as well, as the trough around 4 days starts to try to pull it to the northeast a bit.
In this hour, we're also joined by Thomas, who is showing us some imagery right now, I think. He's still on mute.
Yeah.
Oh, there he is.
So, yeah, here I am. Sorry about that. Yeah, this is forecast model. This is basically the general consensus. I would definitely say the outlier of the one that's making a loop-de-loop around Florida. I definitely say that should not be.
That's still going.
Yeah, I don't know why it's there.
That's statistical. Ignore it.
Yeah, but I'd say that this general track here, or the general consensus of actual good models is taking this, is more likely. I think that we're going to continue to see a gradual westward shift in the models with time as well.
And sorry to interrupt, that's kind of what we just saw as well, you know? The 18Z GFS parent model is actually further west than any of those models on that chart right now. Other than potentially the HMOD and HWRF, if those are on that. And not the statistical models either.
Interesting. So that could be quite important. Are we seeing the big shift back now?
We gotta wait at least another 12 hours or so. I'd want to see the 0Z GFS with potentially new information from the recon.
Yes.
And the European and CMC, at least 0Z, come out to show any significant differences as well. There is a couple questions regarding some of the models. Someone's asking, people are trying to say the ridge on the forecast is intensifying again, if that could have any impacts to... I'm not sure for comparison. I'll try to take a look at that and see if the ridge is potentially intensifying again, just to give context to that question in particular. But I'll keep an eye on that. If you do have any more questions for this hour, we're going to be trying to answer as many as possible. Start your question with Force 13 all in text, lights up in a nice bright orange for it. Just for someone right now, it is not downgraded to a Category 3 at all. It's still a very powerful Category 4 storm.
Saying that.
Someone said, because the models initialized the storm with the wrong strength, could they be inaccurate? I don't typically see that being a huge problem.
They always begin the storm with the wrong strength.
Yeah, and that honestly could. In this case, it is actually significant though, because the strength of the storm will determine how much influence the upper level high has on it, and therefore how far south it'll go and how long it takes for it to make the turn.
Well, then the big question is, what happens if it's stronger than expected then?
Well, it's been stronger than expected throughout its entire life. The thing is, that means it's slowing down more, but it also means that high is keeping it south for longer, so you would think that it would negate itself in that kind of sense, but it really depends on just how its forward speed, really. Forward speed and strength are the two big indicators this time around as to whether this is going to do what current models are saying, or if it's going to shift farther west. I think it's going to shift farther west, unfortunately. But I can't tell you. And Defin just actually put something very interesting that I think we might want to look at some point during the stream this evening.
And speaking of any model trend differences, the 18Z GFS is actually very significantly south for the same time periods as the 12Z GFS run, which for further down the line impacts could be concerning because it disconnects it more from the trough potentially that's supposed to kick it out to sea from the southeastern states. So we definitely need to keep an eye on that as well.
We're looking again at the latest the infrared imagery. It is only about 2, maybe 3 minutes old, so this is right up to date. And we're looking again at a potentially intensifying storm, spreading out a lot more on the southern side with those darker colors, and still swirling around the center of the storm, wrapping around. It's a matter of time until an Eyewall replacement cycle happens. How long do you think this storm has got?
I don't know, honestly.
I mean, it really depends if we get a better look on how this deeper convection is. If you look at the 1 minute imagery, you can kind of see that some of the new blow-up of convection is inside the initial blow-up that we saw an hour ago. If that continues and we see another solid ring separated, then maybe we could start to get hints of an Eyewall replacement cycle. But, with the 1 minute imagery and this, newer development, it's too early to really tell at this point in time. Eyewall replacement cycles are incredibly difficult to predict, and we can only really say that they're happening once you really start to see the secondary Eyewall form of microwave imagery. I will actually try to pull that microwave imagery up shortly, but that's usually a few hours dated no matter what. So it doesn't give us a really current grasp on the exact situation at the moment. When we see that, we typically have to rely on potential infrared looks to see if convection bands are separated from each other.
Eye temperature is plus 14 degrees. Cloud top temperatures are generally in the minus 69 to 73 range, depending on where in the Eyewall you're looking at. With the structure that the storm's got, I would say it is probably 155 at this point.
I would have to agree, especially with the very robust convection that has suddenly developed on Dorian. 155 seems pretty accurate to me. It seems like that convection isn't quite as robust as it was, though, just a little bit ago. But it's much more widespread. Cooler cloud tops are more widespread on the system, but they aren't quite as cool as they were.
I mean, uniformity, I think, is more important than intensity.
Yeah. It is very uniform right now.
Yeah. I mean, what we were seeing last night was a significant amount of lopsidedness to the east. At about 10 p.m. Eastern yesterday, so about 20 hours ago, we were looking at potentially what could have been a breakdown on the western side. That convection was really dying off, and unfortunately, as we can clearly see, that obviously has not happened, despite, most wishes towards such a thing potentially happening. But we really have to monitor now and see how this continues to develop over the coming hours. Like we were talking about reconnaissance. Both planes, I think, are now off the coast of Florida. They both are at this point in time. The initial one that was over the Gulf of Mexico has actually gotten the jump and is further ahead than the one that took off from Florida at this point in time.
Well, that would make sense if it's already in the air and going.
Oh, yeah, totally. So before the 8 p.m. advisory, we should be getting some recon information in. And hopefully at that point, they can actually use some of that data in the 0Z model runs for the GFS and potentially other ones as well, give us a bit of a better grasp on the potential situation that we're seeing.
All right. Well, again, we look at that latest imagery, and that's something we'll be watching extremely closely until the recon planes arrive, and when they do, we'll have the latest information there for you as well. Would anyone else like to bring anything up at this point?
Yeah, I mean, the storm, while it's doing this, also looks like its eye is a little wobbly, at least in my opinion. And I think that also we're starting to see this kind of trail left behind by it, of clouds and just overcast and stuff behind as a result of maybe some shear. So I don't know if that could inhibit it a little bit, but I also think it might be slowing down a little bit in the latest few frames.
Really?
Yeah, I'm also currently watching. I've also currently saw the 18 Zulu model runs from the model guidance for the intensity, and surprisingly, not a lot of models are taking it to Cat 5. It's a lot of them are. Some of them are having it peak towards there. Others are taking it down from its current intensity as well. So it's even the intensity guidance is all over the place.
Wow. Alright, I've accidentally thrown that other imagery away, so we'll go and get that back in a little while.
Oh my.
In the meantime, let us go back and revisit that track again. In case you're seeing it for the first time, the National Hurricane Center track now looks like this. And they've issued a tropical storm watch for the east coast of Florida from Deerfield Beach to Sebastian Inlet. The hurricane warning remains in effect for the northwestern Bahamas, excluding Andros Island, and the hurricane watch is in effect for Andros Island. So that is the latest. The National Hurricane Center is still expecting the storm to stay off the coast of Florida in terms of the center of the storm, but that means that tropical storm force winds or even hurricane force winds could still strike land in Florida and all of those other states to its north, as far as the Outer Banks of North Carolina at the least. Well, actually, Thomas, you're showing us another form of imagery there, if you want to talk about it.
Yeah, so while other imagery is being recovered, I can talk about this. This is very, very intriguing to me, that we have these sudden bursts of convection. We've had really since last night these bursts of convection that have occurred on the western side. So what'll happen is you get a burst on the western side, it wraps around, and as soon as it finishes wrapping around, you get another big burst of convection. It's just been progressively getting stronger and stronger and stronger. And I feel like that's what we're seeing right now. I also feel like we can tell an Eyewall replacement cycle, at least in my opinion, might be coming at some point soon. I haven't looked at microwave, but if we notice here, we have this obvious ring on the outside here, and we have this other part on the inside here, which might be part of the inner eye wall. But we could see this band on the outside trying to wrap up and tighten up a bit. And maybe it could begin to choke off this initial eye wall. But we will have to see. Either way, it's interesting nonetheless. Outflow is just stellar on the storm. The eye looks fantastic. The presentation of the storm is about as good as you can get for a Category 4. I mean, it looks really good. It reminds me a lot of Igor of 2010,
really?
Which was one of those storms. Had fantastic presentation for a Category 4. In the end, it was a very borderline case. I would say it was a Category 4, but this is reminding me a lot of that, just on how borderline this could get later this evening.
And again, there we are with an image. Now we can get multiple images once again. The latest from this is just less than a minute old, so this imagery is right up to date all the time as we continue to watch tonight, as we wait for more information to come in. David, you got something for us?
Not at this point in time. No questions on Facebook, but I'm following the chat very closely, and Dorian's eye, I'm really impressed with it. The colouring and I think, and I stand corrected, there's more red in the eye to a couple of hours ago. Am I right in putting it that way?
More red where, sorry?
In the inner eye.
The inner eye?
Or the
You
eye.
mean the eye wall?
The eye wall.
Well, it depends what you mean there, because red isn't necessarily the colour we're looking for. We're looking for more black colours. Is that what you mean?
I was looking at the amount of red, but the black is the more important one. So
Yeah, the red colours are about minus 60 degree cloud tops. The black is minus 70. And the more you get minus 70 around the eye, the stronger this storm is. With an eye temperature of about 15 degrees, you would need to see a whole ring to call it a borderline category 5. Maybe, maybe not. If you get minus 70 all the way around with one or two little spots a little bit higher than, or lower as the case may be, with that minus 71, 72, we might just put it over the top to category 5. But it would have to sustain itself for a few hours for that to occur. What is going on by the Eyewall is a question we get. There is an area of lowered convection that's been growing fairly quick. Is that contrary to what we've been talking about so far, Thomas?
So you say an area of lowered convection?
Apparently.
I mean, if he means like on the northern side that the convection seems to have tapered off a bit, then yeah, I agree. But on the southern side, we've seen this next big burst of minus 70 to minus 75 cloud tops. So I think it's more a relocation of where the band is at this point than it is that some convection has weakened. It does appear that it has weakened, but I think personally that just a lot of convection is going around that eye wall right now, and it's really wrapping itself around very quickly. And so sometimes, at least to me, it seems like you can get the illusion that a part of it has weakened when it's more that the part that is stronger has relocated itself. At least that's what I think.
We're still getting the most direct kind of questions. Here's one. Will it strike Florida as a Category 5?
No. No. If it were to make landfall on Florida, it would have already hit the Bahamas, which honestly could actually have a little bit of an effect because of how small this storm is. But it'll begin to weaken after it passes the Bahamas, and I think it will have already began its turn by the time it would hit Florida, which definitely means it would be on a weakening trend by that point, especially since if this becomes a Category 5, it'll probably be 160, maybe 165 if we're really pushing our luck. By the time it would get to Florida, it would probably be much weaker than that.
Could an Eyewall replacement recycle move the storm way more west? I don't think...
Do they mean it changes the steering? Is that what they're saying?
I can only assume, because I don't think Eyewall replacement cycles decide which way the storm goes.
I didn't think so either.
You were talking about how the storm's strength could possibly impact its track. So if it did weaken one way or another through an Eyewall replacement cycle, seems the most logical. What does that mean?
Well, it could mean that the lower level currents could make it start moving a little faster into the Bahamas, which wouldn't give it as much time to recover before it makes its turn north. So the question would be, since it's moving faster, the trough will have more influence, but since it's moving faster, the trough may not get there as fast, which means it could move farther west. So...
And I guess one from me, really, is what would it have to take now for the storm to move directly west, straight into Florida?
I don't think there's much of a scenario where it could at this point. I think that if it weakened a bit, it may honestly start slowing down more here before the trough picks it up. After it speeds into the Bahamas, I think after it would speed in, it would have to slow down even more. Yeah, but I don't think weakening is going to occur that much because it's under a very warm and deep pocket of water. So, personally, I think it would take I don't know what it would take, honestly.
A lot, clearly.
I don't see it. I don't see it happening. It would have to take the trough not existing, really.
Yeah, that's quite true. Alright, just trying to grab some more imagery whilst we stream here. But there again is the National Hurricane Center's forecast map, if you've not seen it. And that shows you what's expected in the next 5 days. A rather large cone as well, so a huge amount of uncertainty there.
Yeah, it's pretty big.
Alright, let's see if we have some more questions right now. Is it possible if the models shift west, could it be similar to Matthew? I was wondering how long it would take until Matthew's name got mentioned. I also saw another question just now. Will it do a loop like it was forecasted to with Matthew? Oh my. I don't think we're going to see any games like that, are we?
Well,
No.
Orlando?
Right now, as it stands, more data is coming into the models. It might take a couple of runs to catch up. Right now, when it comes to western shifts, the GFS run, I believe, has shifted a bit more to the west. Beyond that, it's going to be a couple more runs till we decide, anyone decides to pinpoint exactly what area the system will be heading directly toward. But yeah, right now it seems as though that the ridging has definitely in the model, especially GFS, have been a bit stronger, which has played out with a more western track, similar to that of for now at least, Matt.
Yeah. Reminder that those hurricane warnings are in effect for the northwestern Bahamas, not for Andros Island, and those tropical storm watches have just been issued for parts of the eastern coast of Florida. How many miles does the tropical storm force winds extend out to? Only 105 miles in radius from the center.
Yeah, its wind field is about as large as its cloud field, really, isn't it?
Yeah, pretty much it is, yes. Could Dorian strike North Carolina or South Carolina as a major hurricane is another question that we get.
It could. It certainly could. I think South Carolina would have a much better chance of it than North Carolina, but yeah, it's not impossible. I think it's less likely that it'll do it than not, but it's certainly not impossible. Dorian's been defying forecasters' expectations really everywhere throughout its entire life, and it could continue to do so. But as of right now, it's not forecasted to by the National Hurricane Center, nor would I be forecasting it to. But you never know. I mean, these storms can be very fickle and can change at a moment's notice.
I've got Bahamas Radar in front of me, but it's glitching out quite a lot and it isn't particularly aesthetically pleasing. Well, I'll just show it for a short while just to show you that we've got it. But this is what the rather glitchy Bahamas Radar is looking like right now. You can still make out a significant band from the storm, and its central core might be starting to appear on that radar scope. I'm not sure why it's glitching out so much like that, but we'll see if we can get a more fluid movement on that sequence of images in due course. Let's now go back to the latest satellite imagery, which we're still poring over very closely as we try and ascertain whether this storm is intensifying. However, Thomas, looking at the very latest images here, I'm starting to see the northern side is fading off and maybe a little bit of decoupling in the eyewall towards the southern side, implying a possible eyewall replacement beginning.
I'm seeing that too. There have been a lot of signs, though, throughout Dorian's life that it's about to begin a Eyewall replacement cycle, and then it proceeds not to do it. I personally just think it's too small. I think the Eyewall is about the size of a storm. I don't think there's room for another Eyewall really to form. Microwave certainly says it doesn't have much room to. I think that one might be trying, and Microwave actually says one might be trying, but it won't manage because it's just too small to really choke off.
Well, the eye temperature is continuing to decrease, now down to 13 degrees. So it's ticking down 1 degree every hour or so at the minute.
Yeah, the good news is that it is weakening. It looks like, at least in the latest frame.
It's certainly not strengthening.
Fluke. Oh, yeah. This could be a fluke, though.
But the NHC did say there would be fluctuations.
They did, and I'm sure they weren't very confident when they issued that forecast saying it would intensify another 5 miles an hour in the next 12 hours, because they know as well as we do that the Eyewall replacement cycle could begin at any point. It could begin right now whilst the storm is pretty much at its peak, and that would really, cut it a bit short from what its potential peak actually could have been.
Yeah, certainly.
So if this is an Eyewall replacement cycle, this is going to get a lot more interesting and might open up another can of worms, Thomas.
Oh, yeah. Alright, well, I'm going to have to go for maybe a few minutes, and I will be right back.
Thomas has got company by the sounds of things.
And Nathan, your reference to a can of worms, would you like to expand on that?
Well, just that the Eyewall replacement cycle, if it's happening, means that the wind field is going to expand, the storm weakens slightly, might favour a little bit more of a westward component, will favour a higher chance of tropical storm force winds in Florida, possibly hurricane force, maybe. But we're watching not just the storm, but also the models and what that ridge is going to do, and whether they will continue the models to track west again at the next update when the new runs come out in a few hours, or whether they'll cycle back east again, maybe.
I would support what you just said, because we know that if systems are weaker, and you mentioned about the possible Eyewall replacement, then the direction factor comes into play again, as you mentioned.
We're also now joined by Justin. Good evening to you.
Good evening.
Good evening.
I imagine you've been watching the stream, or watching at least the storm, and have you seen this weakness start to appear on the northern side, and what do you think it's doing?
I think that I'm really not sure, but I'm starting to see that it may be starting to show a little bit of weakness on the northern side. I mean, the cloud tops on the north are going to get slightly warmer if you look at it very close.
Yeah. A question here. Do we think it's too early to cancel out a Florida landfall? Well, I don't think we've ever said that it's not going to happen, for sure. It's not likely to happen anymore. Doesn't mean that it certainly won't happen. Stranger things have happened. As at this point, it's the time where I always point out to you the National Hurricane Center cone and how the center of the storm's eye could pass anywhere within that cone over the next 5 days, and that is a lot of area that the storm could strike. So yes, it could make landfall anywhere from West Palm Beach to the Outer Banks of North Carolina as a major hurricane. That's true. Whether it will or not, the chances are less than half, but obviously, like anything, the chances are still there. We're going to have a short break here. We'll be back in just a couple of minutes with more coverage on Dorian and hopefully some more updates as recon draw ever nearer. So we continue to watch minute by minute what Hurricane Dorian looks like on the satellite imagery. This is where all our eyes are at right now as we tick along this evening. Current time on the US East Coast is just after 6:30. This is Force 13 Live. My name is Nathan Foy. I'm joined again by the team for this part. The eye temperature slightly cooling, which is a sign of not strengthening. I hesitate to say the word weakening. Cloud tops, whilst they were blowing up very nicely earlier, there is now quite a clear gap there on the northern side, which could possibly also denote weakening. Whether it is or not, that remains to be seen. What it already is, though, is a 150 mile an hour Category 4 storm on the Saffir-Simpson scale, very strong, 240 kilometers per hour. Pressure around 945, according to the National Hurricane Center. We're rolling with 942. The floor's open for any of our team, if you want to go ahead with any thoughts. Or I can keep talking just the same. Well, I can tell you what the warnings are right now, though. A hurricane warning is in effect for the northwestern Bahamas, excluding Andros Island. A hurricane watch for Andros Island itself, and a tropical storm watch has been put into effect from the National Hurricane Center just an hour and a half ago for Deerfield Beach to Sebastian Inlet. According to the National Hurricane Center, hurricane conditions are expected in the hurricane warning area across the northwestern Bahamas by Sunday, with tropical storm conditions beginning tonight. A life-threatening storm surge will raise water levels by as much as 10 to 15 feet above normal tide levels in areas of onshore winds in the Abaco Islands and Grand Bahama Island. Near the coast, the surge will be accompanied by large and destructive waves. Dorian is expected to produce the following rainfall accumulations this weekend into the middle of next week. The northwestern Bahamas, 10 to 15 inches, isolated up to 25. Coastal sections of the southeast United States, 4 to 8 inches, isolated 12. The central Bahamas, 2 to 4 inches, isolated up to 6. This rainfall may cause life-threatening flash floods. Swells will begin to affect the east-facing shores of the Bahamas and Florida and the Florida East Coast and the southeastern United States coast during the next few days. These swells are likely to cause life-threatening surf and rip current conditions. Please consult products from your local weather office. So we home back in on that imagery once again. Anyone have any thoughts on what actually is going on up there?
Well, now, like for any signs of actual eyeball replacement cycle, that had been possibly one of the thoughts might explain what's going on at the moment.
I think it could be happening right now.
We just have to wait for the reconnaissance mission to confirm if that is or if it's not occurring.
Sure, that they'll of course find out.
Yeah, beyond that, the storm still, regardless, remains extremely dangerous, especially for the Bahamas that it'll be heading towards. And beyond that, it's still wait and see, especially with the new data coming in from upper level reconnaissance mission.
And worth remembering that, you know, Eyewall replacement cycles, they aren't the magic pill that kills off a storm necessarily. Sometimes a storm can even maintain its intensity as an Eyewall replacement cycle is underway.
Yeah, that'll be concerning to watch regardless, because let's say even if it weakens, its wind field will definitely expand if it was to happen. And that would cause more problems because more areas would be impacted as a result. And who's to say it wouldn't recover its strength even if it was to weaken?
Nathan.
Sure, go ahead.
I have a question from Jarrett, who's viewing the stream on Facebook, and I need assistance from others. Will it impact in Lakeland, Florida?
Yeah, we've been looking at these areas, Tampa, Lakeland, Orlando. These are a lot of the places that are up in the air right now. Tropical storm force winds are possible. We really don't know, and no one else can tell you with certainty that they do, whether tropical storm force winds will occur over those areas, especially the western side of the peninsula. Chances are going down. Generally, let's see, actually, Lakeland, well, it will appear on your screen every so often. It might be a little while till it appears at the minute, but I had it somewhere else. Lakeland is approximately in the 40-something% for that area for tropical storm force winds. Tampa is in the middle 30s. It's along the Florida East Coast where those percentage chances are very high. I think Orlando's 68. Daytona Beach is around 80. The Cape Canaveral area, that's in the high 80s, maybe pushing 90% still of tropical storm force winds. There is no indication that Florida is out of the woods, as it would be, in any stretch of the word or the phrase. But what we can say is that in all likelihood, the worst of the hurricane will avoid the east coast of Florida. That doesn't mean that you could callously not prepare at all for the storm. It's still got to be taken very seriously. Just keep watching very closely. If it turns further north than expected, then hopefully things won't turn out too bad. But at the moment, we're still calling for the potential for hurricane force winds along the Florida coast. And the National Hurricane Center will reflect that in a day or so if the storm continues to push towards the west.
And Nathan, National Weather Service, Wakefield, depending on the exact track of Hurricane Dorian, we have the potential to see direct impacts with regard to heavy rain, wind, storm surge. However, and this is their clear message, immediate concerns are the increased risk for rip currents at the beaches beginning tomorrow. That's for the National Weather Service, Wakefield.
That's further north, isn't it?
Yes, I'm just looking at a chart. Hampton is inland, so it's to the east of Norfolk,
Virginia,
down, and
North Carolina,
then
Virginia, somewhere over
further
there.
north.
Sure. All right. Well, yeah. You know, the Carolinas, Georgia, even perhaps Virginia, but a little bit early to talk about that at the minute. Could get impacts from the storm. Just to show you that whole wind speed probability graphic. Actually, it's annoyingly not up to date at the minute. It's a few hours out. It's still using the 2 p.m. advisory. I assume they do one for the 5 p.m. advisory. Maybe I'm wrong in that. But anyway, that was the last one that came out. So you can even see, as far as the Delmarva Peninsula now, 5% chance of tropical storm force winds. And then you look further south towards Norfolk, 15%. The Outer Banks of North Carolina already into the moderate range, 30 to 40%, maybe a little more. The southern part of North Carolina, 50% now. South Carolina, 60% plus along the coast. Georgia as well in the 60s along the coast, and Florida up into the 70s, 80s, getting towards 90. Still a very high chance of tropical storm force winds along there, but then you look towards the western coast of Florida. That is, again, a massive area of uncertainty right now. The western coast of Florida, whether they will get tropical storm force winds. Generally, we're looking 25 to 30% chance along the coast. That is down a lot upon what we were looking at earlier. Yesterday, we were talking in the 60s along the coast, and now it's in the 20s and 30s. Let's see if we have some more questions. Is it possible that the storm won't slow down at all? Well, it is already slowing down. It was at one point when it was first trekking through the Atlantic, intensifying, it was doing 14 miles per hour. Then it went down to 10, and then it went down to 8. At the moment, National Hurricane Center, are they still saying 8? Yep, they're still going with 8 miles per hour for the current movement of the storm. And that's another thing we've got to watch out for as well. And I'll do a little calculation here how far it's moved in the last 2 hours. It has moved west by 16 miles, so it is still moving at 8 miles per hour at the moment. So no slowdown yet.
And how long before the next advisory comes out?
Yep, so the National Hurricane Center will be issuing the new advisory, an intermediate advisory at 8 p.m. Eastern Time, followed by a full advisory at 11. In the meantime, I think Recon will be quite busy, and we'll be finding out a lot more, hopefully, for what's going on inside the storm. Any news on that from anyone?
No, just
Hold on, I'm checking right now.
Yeah.
You said recon?
Yeah, any news from Recon at the moment?
They're heading into the storm right now.
So
They're on the outer bands at the moment.
So we should have some information within minutes. So fingers crossed we'll get some new information on the storm before the hour is out. In the meantime, I guess we can take some questions. Would the Eyewall replacement cycle be able to bring tropical storm force winds towards the west coast of Florida if it makes landfall, or if it gets awfully close? I assume that's what you meant by ERC. I can't think it might mean anything else. Again, well, I think we sort of pointed out those percentage chances. An Eyewall replacement cycle will increase the storm's wind field. So if one is occurring right now, it will become larger. So that will, by default, increase the chances of the storm conditions being felt anywhere near the storm. At the moment, the wind field only goes out about 105 miles. That could extend by several dozen miles if an Eyewall replacement cycle is completed. But apparently Recon has found that the ridge is stronger in any case, Orlando, right?
Yes.
Yeah, their new data is being put into the models as a result, and there seems to be a western shift. Most notably right now, one of the bigger models, the GFS, shows that. and there's a possibility that it might become more concerning, mainly because the fact that there might be catch up when it comes to new data coming in from that, as recon is still in the area at the upper levels.
Playing catch up. Could it re-strengthen after the Eyewall replacement cycle?
I mean, it has the potential to, but will it? It's too soon to say. Sometimes it doesn't, sometimes it does. It all depends if it's successful, what are the conditions that it will be under, and all that, and how long it will take to complete as well. It all
Yeah,
counts
that's
in.
another question that we get here. How long can an Eyewall replacement cycle take? What was that storm that we had in fairly recently, in the last year, I think it was, that just kept going with an Eyewall replacement cycle for days?
I think I forgot the name.
Mankut?
Did Mankut
No.
do that?
I
was in the
don't
West-
know.
It was in the Western Pacific, and it was this year. I think it was.
Oh gosh, I can't remember now. But
Yeah.
some storms just keep going with Eyewall replacement cycles. I just could never complete one.
Yeah, we've seen that happen. I believe another example of a failed Eyewall replacement cycle might be Florence.
Yeah, Florence blew it in the end, didn't it?
Yeah,
Thankfully.
it tried, and then afterwards, it just didn't work out. It was over.
How big is the hurricane, and is it small or big compared to others? I'll let you answer that the second half of that question in a moment, but the first half is that the radius of hurricane force winds extend outwards to 30 miles, and the tropical storm force winds extend out to 105 miles from the center. So that's a diameter roughly of 210 miles. As we look at it on the screen, if we were to do a calculation of its width, if we're going to use the main cloud area, so we'll take the green areas onwards. So from east to west, it's about 270 miles wide. And from north to south, this is counting the green areas only, or worse, it's about 200 miles north to south. It is wider than it is lengthways.
Yeah. If I were to compare it to any storm when it comes relatively to size, I think a good comparison might be Andrew.
Yes, I mean, so many comparisons with Andrew right now.
Yeah, it's kind of heading into the general area. It's a strong system. It might threaten the United States, so I guess it's fair game.
Well, looking again at this latest imagery, there is maybe a little bit of fighting back from the cloud tops in those latest frames on the northwestern side.
Of course there is.
And the eye temperature's back up to 16 degrees. So, are we seeing an Eyewall replacement cycle or not, after all?
Yeah, it's the storm is just it's everywhere. It tried for the last 2 days. Like we kept on thinking that it was gonna do an Eyewall replacement cycle, and it just never happened.
Is it another instance of that occurring right now?
Yeah, we might be bamboozled again.
Well, this is what we get when we have 1 minute imagery.
It's pretty good, but you know you can't get knee-jerk reactions as you'd say sometimes.
I do indeed. Can major hurricane force winds reach the Bahamas? Well, if you didn't know that already and you're in the Bahamas, then I'm afraid you've got a rude awakening. By tomorrow, this storm will arrive and it will deliver major hurricane force winds of over 115 miles per hour, probably Category 4 winds for wherever it strikes the closest, or if it makes landfall, then it will get the full intensity and the maximum intensity of what the storm is packing when you see those National Hurricane Center advisories. On top of that, though, not just with the wind speed, you've got a 15-foot storm surge on the way for those northernmost islands, and rainfall amounts could reach 25 inches.
Yeah. For the record, 15 feet is extremely high, so if you're in this area and you still aren't aware of this, it's gonna be really ugly, to say the least.
If we just pan to the left a little bit on this imagery as well, you'll see there where some of those islands are as well. So places like Marsh Harbour is located on the left hand side of that image. Treasure Key, which gets mentioned in a lot of our updates. Those two places in particular will have the biggest concern, and Hope Town as well towards the east. Three significant settlements on the northern part of that island will be right in the middle of all this, really. I can tell you latest distances. The middle of the eye now is 156 miles from Great Abaco Island, which is where all of those settlements are. From Grand Bahama, it is 207 miles. So, if it continues moving at 8 miles an hour, 156 from Great Abaco, that is 19 hours away. If it slows down, that will add up to a higher number, of course. But if it keeps going at the same speed, it's 19 hours away from landfall on the first of the Bahamas Islands.
Yeah, it's especially if it slows down, it's going to be worse because those same conditions are going to be stuck around. Not only going to deal with the very intense winds of a major hurricane, you're also going to deal with extremely high storm surge, and you're also going to deal with extremely high rainfall. Overall, just a terrible mix for the northern Bahama Island.
Why is the storm going to weaken significantly, even without landfalling in Florida? Well, let's not forget, we're talking about the space of 5 days on the National Hurricane Center's forecast. So, as we look back at the National Hurricane Center forecast cone here, there it is, major hurricane moving through the Bahamas. Upwelling could cause the storm to weaken if it's moving slowly enough. Eyewall replacement cycles could start to get in the way. Wind shear is going to start to rise as we get towards the middle part of the week. That's probably what's really going to take the intensity out of the storm. Although not fully, because the National Hurricane Center do acknowledge with this forecast track, the Wednesday point is 110 miles an hour and the Thursday point is only 100 miles per hour, so it doesn't weaken very much at all between those 2 points, so it does still keep going. There's less energy from the sea surface temperatures up there. That will be another contributing factor. Maybe dry air might get a little bit more of a hold on the storm up there too, so it will conspire against the storm eventually, not till it reaches really the South Carolina region, from what I've seen. But I guess the main question is, why will it weaken initially from the Category 5, if it gets to Category 5? And I guess just because it'll be moving so slowly.
Yeah, but it'll definitely... Oh man, my voice. It'll definitely be worth watching.
Let's see here. I heard that the hurricane will stall out over the northern Bahamas for about 36 hours coming up starting Sunday, and is that true? Well, take this away with you, the National Hurricane Center forecast map. It does move very slowly. In fact, if I was just to do some quick calculations here, the National Hurricane Center, between the first, the initialization point and that first forecast point, that's about 85 miles in 12 hours. From there, it let's see here, trying to do this as quickly as possible. The next 12 hours it moves about 80 miles up until that landfall point, pretty much, right? The first of the Bahamas. And then as it's moving through the Bahamas, another 12-hour period, 46 miles in that 12-hour period, so not very fast at all. And then it really slows down Monday morning, That Monday morning period over 12 hours, according to the National Hurricane Center, only 29 miles of movement. That suggests a movement of just 2 miles per hour. So that would be pretty devastating for those areas if the storm was still packing winds of, say, 140 miles per hour, which I think is what they're expecting at that point. So that would be pretty bad. And then it would turn towards the north a little bit more. Then it becomes, when you get beyond the 48-hour period on that chart, they do the points every day rather than every 12 hours. So the next point is only 80 miles in 24 hours. So again, that's still rather slow movement. And then it starts to speed up again as it moves off towards the north and then northeast. Any other thoughts before we finish up this hour, guys?
I'm really not sure what else to say about this storm.
But we're just
really
still
sad.
watching it. Any more recon? We're just about to get some readings.
I believe they're now.
Well,
in
the last I've heard, the aircraft are starting to make the turn towards the storm.
So they're still not quite in there just yet.
Yeah, they're just reaching the outside of the core at the moment.
And some people actually asking about the other systems in the Atlantic as well, and whether we will talk about them tonight. We might get around to that as we start the next hour. I can certainly get them up on my screen ready. But I can tell you at this point, according to the National Hurricane Center, there are 2 areas of interest. One that's passing the Cape Verde Islands now, well, is about to, 60% chance in the next 5 days, and one in the Gulf of Mexico just off the Yucatan Peninsula, 30% chance in the next 5 days. Both of those systems could form, but the main feature is Dorian right now, and that's what we're sticking with for the vast majority of our coverage tonight. National Hurricane Center update in 2 hours. In the meantime, we have some recon planes that will hopefully send us some observations as we continue to look at the storm on satellite. We'll be back in a few minutes. Coverage continues in a moment. You can also help the project become even better by becoming a patron. You can see more information about all the benefits involved by visiting patreon.com/Force13. With a special thanks to these people for being our most valued patrons this month. You can also check out our growing merch store so you can show Force 13's colors wherever you go. You can also find a link to our Discord server underneath this video in the description.